Good morning, everybody. Glad to have you here today. And I'd like to invite you to follow along if you're in a position where you can. We will be in the 27th chapter of Proverbs. We'll be starting in the 23rd verse, chapter 27, beginning in verse 23. And these are some good words for the time in which we live in, as we're going to read a few verses here that advise us to be careful with what we have, to be careful with our finances, that we manage them wisely. And certainly this would be good advice to a son, as it was originally intended. And so picking up in verse 23, he says, "Be thou diligent to know the state of thy flocks, and look well to thy herds." Obviously a little different situation in that time. A person's most of a person's wealth wouldn't be in the bank, wouldn't be in the stock market. Well, it kind of would be in the stock market. It'd be in their livestock, in their animals. Their again, whether it was cattle or sheep or goats or those kind of things. And we see then the word herds as well, to take care of those. And so what he is saying is to his son, take care of your flock. Well, his flock would have been his resources. It would have been his savings account, basically. If he is where his wealth was tied up. Man's wealth was measured by how big of a flock he had, and so a wise man would be careful and keep an eye on that flock. And again, the lesson carries over to us. We may not have a flock of cattle to tend to, but still the idea is be diligent in managing what you have been given, the resources that you have, whether, and the words again that he used there, take care of your flock. Now, whether your flock's 2 cows or 200 cows, take care of them. Same thing. He's saying, no matter what you have, we should be very diligent, and certainly in our world, in the current economy and all that goes on around us, those are wise words. And he tells us why. He says, "Riches are not forever, and doth the crown endure to every generation? The hay appeareth, and the tender grass showeth itself, and the herbs of the mountain are gathered. The lambs are for thy clothing, and the goats are for the price of the field. And thou shalt have goat's milk enough for thy food, for the food of thy household, and for the maintenance for thy maidens." Because wealth can get away from you, and if you're not careful, we see it on a fairly regular basis. Celebrities and other people, athletes who are millionaires, multimillionaires one day, and filing for bankruptcy the next. So it's important, since riches are not forever, that we be good stewards, that we take care of our things. And the reason, obviously, he says, because our riches don't last forever. Again, you might have a big flock, and in their situation, have a big flock, and disease come through, and tomorrow you may not have a flock. We saw that about 14 years ago. People who had large stock portfolios, again, different kind of stock, but they had, and practically overnight, they went from being very wealthy to bankrupt, and many of them jumping off buildings and things because they had lost everything. Riches can disappear. And he says, his example is, he says, it goes away. It can disappear. As he goes on, he's saying, that nothing is forever. He says the crown endured to every generation. Again, even the government can be overthrown. You might be king today, and you might be, out tomorrow. And he says these things have a lifestyle, not a lifestyle, but a life cycle. Hay appeareth, tender grass shows itself, herbs of the mountains are gathered. Things tend to go through a cycle again, especially in their situation. Talking about livestock, cattle gets old. Cattle, they get old and they'll eventually they'll die. And so if you don't manage that flock and reinvest and breed that flock and continue to bring new bloodlines in, you will eventually end up with no flock. And so you have to be wise and look over your resources and be careful with them, and just great advice again for any generation, especially our young people. So many of I'm not trying to throw the young people under the bus, because honestly it's not their fault. It's their parents and grandparents for not teaching them any better, that they just don't understand the value of managing. As the old saying goes, they seem to think sometimes money grows on trees, and they don't understand management and stewardship. If they run out, they just go ask mama for more. They don't understand that, and so it's a lesson that we need to be. Another one of those lessons that we've talked about. We need to be modeling ourselves, and we need to be teaching our young people to be good stewards. And one of the things in particular that comes from that is them being grateful to the God who gave us those resources. Think about that today. Have a great day. Manage your resources. Teach someone else. Teach your children, your grandchildren to be grateful to God and to manage what God has blessed them with. Thank you, and we'll see you here tomorrow morning.